When the Council declared humanity weak, the stars burned red by Dawn Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Council's crystalline podium, her weathered hands steady despite the weight of 7 billion souls resting on her shoulders. The amphitheater stretched impossibly high above her, filled with representatives from 347 species, each more ancient and technologically advanced than humanity could ever hope to be. The Krillian High Judge's 6 eyes regarded her with what she had learned to recognize as contempt. "The matter is settled," his translator crackled. "Humanity's petition for full membership is denied. Your species lacks the fundamental qualities required for galactic citizenship." Elena's jaw tightened. "And what qualities might those be, Your Honor?" "Strength," came the reply from the Vorthak War Prime, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's artificial suns. "Your warriors fall to a single plasma bolt. Your ships crumble like dried leaves before our dreadnoughts." "Intelligence," added the Nixari Collective's representative, her telepathic voice echoing in every mind present. "Your computational matrices are primitive. Your scientific advancement crawls at glacial pace." "Unity," concluded the ethereal, Asthan delegate, its form shifting like liquid starlight. "You war amongst yourselves endlessly. Even now your homeworld burns with conflict." The chamber filled with harmonious agreement. Clicks, chirps, psychic pulses, and sounds Elena couldn't begin to categorize. 3 centuries of observation, they claimed. 3 centuries of watching humanity stumble from their cradle world, barely managing to establish a handful of colonies before the Council made first contact. "We offer you protected status," the High Judge continued. "Your species will be preserved, studied, perhaps even uplifted in a few millennia when you prove capable of evolution." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the message waiting in her ship's quantum communicator, the one she'd hoped never to send. When she opened them again, something had changed in her expression, something that made several nearby delegates shift uncomfortably. "You're right," she said quietly. "We are weak, our ships are fragile, our weapons crude, our minds slow." She paused, letting the words settle. "But you've made one critical error in your assessment." "Enlighten us," the High Judge said, amusement rippling through his translator. "You assume those are our only strengths." Elena reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small, unremarkable device. Every security system in the chamber should have detected it, but human engineers had spent decades studying Council technology, finding gaps that superior intellects had overlooked in their arrogance. 300 years ago, we sent out our first interstellar probe," she continued, her finger hovering over the device's single button. "Not to your nearest systems, as you assumed. We sent it in the opposite direction. While your scouts watched our clumsy expansion, we were mapping every star, every planet, every asteroid in a sphere 50 light-years across." The chamber's ambient sound began to fade as delegates started paying attention. 200 years ago, we made first contact, not with your council, but with the Corvin Hive. You remember them, don't you? The species you uplifted and then abandoned when they became problematic? They were very interested in our offer of alliance. The Vorthak War Prime's mandibles clicked nervously. The Corvin had been exterminated, supposedly, after they'd turned their council-gifted technology against their benefactors. 100 years ago, we established our first real colony. Not on the garden worlds you so graciously allowed us, but in the deep void between stars, asteroid habitats, mobile shipyards, facilities that don't appear on any star chart because they're never in the same place twice. Elena smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. 50 years ago, we cracked quantum entanglement communication. Not the slow, cumbersome version you use, but instant transmission across any distance. Every human outpost, every hidden base, every sleeper cell we've placed throughout Council space has been coordinating for half a century. The chamber erupted in alarm as delegates began accessing their own communication networks, demanding status reports from their homeworlds. Elena waited patiently as the chaos mounted. 20 years ago, we solved the dark matter interaction problem. Those primitive ships of ours, they're not meant for conquest. They're meant to be underestimated. Our real fleet has been moving through dark space for 2 decades, invisible to your sensors, positioning themselves around every council world. The High Judge's voice cut through the noise. You speak of deception and cowardice. This only proves our point about your unworthiness. No, Elena replied, pressing the button. This proves our point about yours. The device emitted a single pulse, a quantum signal that would reach every corner of the galaxy instantaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the reports began flooding in. Corvan battle fleets, thought extinct, emerging from hidden bases to strike at Krillian shipping lanes. Human stealth ships decloaking around Vorthak military installations, not to attack, but to broadcast something far more devastating. Evidence of war prime atrocities against client species, transmitted directly to those species' homeworlds. Nexari, collective processing nodes shutting down one by one as human cyber warfare specialists, trained by the Corvan for 2 centuries, introduced viruses specifically designed to exploit the collective's perfect unity, their greatest strength turned into their greatest weakness. The Asthan delegates' form flickered as quantum disruption fields activated around their energy-based civilization's core worlds, not destroying them, but forcing them into physical forms they hadn't worn for millennia, forms that suddenly made them vulnerable. You called us weak because our ships are fragile, Elena said as alarms blared throughout the chamber. But we never needed strong ships. We needed you to think we were harmless while we turned your own subject species against you. You called us stupid because our technology is primitive, but we never needed advanced technology. We needed you to underestimate our ability to adapt yours. She walked closer to the podium as Council security forces scrambled to respond to threats that were already inside their perimeter, had been for decades. You called us divided because we fight amongst ourselves, but you never understood that our conflicts aren't weakness. They're practice. Every war we've fought has taught us something new about combat, about strategy, about how to find the flaws in systems that seem perfect. The chamber's lights flickered as power grids across Council space began failing. Not destroyed, but seized, taken over by infiltrators who had spent generations learning how to think like their enemies. But most importantly, Elena continued, her voice carrying clearly through the chaos, you never understood what we were really fighting for. Your species fight for territory, for resources, for dominance. We fight for each other. Every human who dies protecting their family creates 10 more who will never surrender. Every colony you've overlooked becomes a fortress. Every insult you've leveled at our species becomes fuel for our determination. She reached the podium and looked up at the High Judge, who had fallen silent as reports continued pouring in from across the galaxy. The Council's reign ends today, not because we conquered you, but because we convinced your subjects to conquer themselves. Not because we were stronger, but because we were patient. Not because we were unified, but because we learned to make unity from diversity. Elena turned to face the entire chamber, her voice rising. You want to know what makes humanity special? We don't just survive, we don't just adapt. We take the worst situation possible and we find a way to make it work for us. You gave us 300 years of humiliation, of being treated like children, of watching our peers receive gifts we were deemed unworthy of. She smiled again, and this time it was genuinely warm. Thank you. You gave us exactly what we needed: motivation, time, and enemies arrogant enough to ignore the threat growing in their shadows. The stars burned red that dawn, not with destruction, but with the light of 1,000 human settlements revealing themselves across the galaxy, each one broadcasting the same message. Humanity does not ask for membership in your council. We are founding our own. And in the depths of space where no council sensor had ever looked, the real human fleet began its journey home, not as conquerors, but as liberators, carrying with them the genetic samples and cultural archives of every species the Council had deemed unworthy over the millennia. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of the Terran Commonwealth was about to begin.